Welcome, everyone. We're so glad that you're joining us today. I'm very excited to introduce our very special guest. This is Banafsheh Sayyad. Banafsheh is a Persian master sacred dancer, choreographer, acupuncturist, transformational teacher, activist, and the founder of Dance of Oneness. A deeply profound and highly accessible spiritual teacher of embodiment, Banafsheh performs and teaches internationally, initiating people into the wisdom of their bodies. Yay to that, Banafsheh. Welcome. Lovely to have you in this conversation. How are you today?
I am well, William. So good to be with you and to speak about what I think we both love so much.
This is true. This is a real treat for me. Mixture of dance, spirituality, embodiment, healing, all that kind of stuff. But first of all, before we go deep into it, what I'd love to do is find out how you got into this in the first place. I mean, as a child, how old were you when you started to wake up, and where were you when you started to wake up, and how were your parents in relation to you waking up?
Well, as far back as I can remember, when I was like this big or even smaller than that, I just loved to dance. And that was one of my passions. The other passion was for the divine, for the mystery that moves and it moves us, but is invisible, animates everything, but cannot be seen. And over time, these two passions merged like two flames merging. And I began to commune with this mystery through dance and express it through dance. But my path was arduous because I come from Iran, a culture where dancing is not seen as high art. And these days, as you may know, it's even banned in public for women to dance. So I did not get much support, even though I come from a lineage of performing artists. But I did it anyway, because this is why I was here, and nothing could stop me. And dance really helped me survive these kinds of oppositions, and it also helped me survive the brutal things that happened in my country when the 1979 revolution happened. I was a child, and that through dance, I tried to survive that. And then when we immigrated to the United States, having no choice but to do that, it also helped me survive the tribulations I faced in the United States, being considered a terrorist while we were actually escaping from a terrorist regime. So all kinds of real deep obstacles and deep pain and sources of pain and suffering that I was able to dance with and dance through.
Let me just get this picture. There you are. If 3, 4, 5 years old, naturally expressing yourself and your relationship with life through dance.
Yeah.
And 3, 4, 5 years old, you're also having a sense of the magic of life.
Yes, and this feeling that there was an invisible being that I was in communication with, that I would dance with, and that was always with me. And my parents tell me that I was always talking. I would wake them up because my cot was in the room in the beginning, and I would wake them up talking.
Were you talking to a kind of small spirit in your room, or were you talking to the divine?
I felt I had an invisible friend.
Yeah.
It's always with me, and that I was in communication with and danced with me, and I would dance with this being. And this being never went away, was always there.
And is still with you?
Yes, yes. And over time, this being became more my beloved, and everything, actually. A friend, the mother, my beloved, everything that you can imagine.
This is a very intimate relationship with God, Goddess, the mystery, isn't it? It's very intimate and felt.
Yes, very intimate and felt very tangible.
So how dangerous was it for you and your family as you got out of Iran and came to the States?
We left before the revolution happened, and just slightly, shortly before it happened, because my father's work was being censored during the regime of Shah. That was before the revolution of 1979. And we left temporarily, thinking, okay, he wanted to sort of regroup, rethink what his next steps should be as a filmmaker, as a theater director, and a television director and actor. So we left for him to sort of reflect on what was his next step. But then the revolution happened, and my father never went back to Iran, but my mother and my sister and I did. And when we were living there, under the new government, and that was very, it was shocking. It was really shocking, the difference that had happened. People had thought that something great was going to happen, and then quickly we found out that that was not what was happening at all. That this was a very, very dangerous regime that had come to power, that was killing so many dissidents, and women's rights were being eroded, by the day, as days went by.
As a woman filled with the natural flow of dance, you were a red rag to conservative people in Iran, weren't you? Just a red flag.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I was a teenager then. I was a young teenager. I was about 12, and it wasn't. It was it was things were starting to get going basically for the regime. Taking coming to its full power, so to speak. And it was very slow. The way women's rights started being eroded was actually quite slow. It didn't happen overnight. Like the hijab that is now mandatory didn't happen overnight. It was very slow. So before we knew it, we were forced to wear this hijab, and we were forced to, be okay with so many rights being eroded away.
So with all that happening around you, which must have been oppressive, at least frightening at most, were you able? I'm thinking of in the Sufi turning, after they've done the spinning, they come to an end and they close gracefully. And I'm wondering whether in the midst of all that horror and sexism and violence and bullying, it's basically just bullying. I'm wondering if in the middle of all that, you were able to come home to spirit within yourself. And I'm trying to find a silver lining in what is a horrible situation.
Well, not right away, that's for sure. No, not right away. And I will tell you why. When I was a little girl, I was very Islamic. I was like a baby Muslim. And this is because my grandmother was a deeply spiritual being whose expression, whose practice was Islam. But I feel like who she really was someone who was living through the heart, living heartfully. And so Islam had touched her and opened her to the teachings in a way that were so deep and so profound. And they touched me because, as I told you, my passion, I had a natural passion for the divine. So the first stories that came to me from the outside world were the Islamic stories. And I found them amazing and riveting, and this kind of dedication to something greater at all times, praying 5 times a day, fasting. I just found them fascinating. And I was so in love with my grandmother that what she was teaching me really, really spoke to my heart. So it was so devastating to see these teachings that I was so intimate with were being used to kill and pillage and to oppress people. It was devastating. And I actually had no solace for a long, long time. And it wasn't until I found the work of Rumi, just by accident, opening a book. It wasn't until then that I found a little bit of solace.
How old were you? Where were you when you found Rumi? And
I was 13. I was in Tehran.
when did you then come across to the States?
That was when I was 15 years old. I turned 15 in the States.
Was that a safe journey or an escape?
It wasn't an escape. There was a window of time, an opportunity that my mother took, because my father was in the States, and he had enrolled in a college in New York City just to pass his time. And it just so happened that the Iranian government allowed the family of people who were studying abroad to join them. They gave them, they gave us the green light to travel. And then we went to Austria and applied for a US visa.
Okay. So I'm imagining that most of the people listening to us will know of Rumi, but in case they don't, just give us a 2-sentence, who is Rumi, just in case they don't know who he is.
Absolutely. He's a Persian poet who lived in the 13th century. And he's really, he speaks to our heart. He's like the poet of the soul, so beautifully encapsulating messages that just inspire our soul through words. And I have to say, William, that these words that he spoke, and he did speak them, he didn't really write them, flowered through him as he whirled, as he turned, as he danced.
There's a phrase of his which has been echoing through my psyche for decades, which I use when I need to, which is, I don't know what it is in Persian, of course, but in English, it's dissolve me like sugar in warm tea. And that's a perfect affirmation mantra for me sometimes when I just need to surrender and dissolve me like sugar in warm tea. Do you have a particular phrase of his that echoes through your psyche?
I love what you just said. And when you're like a sugar dissolving in tea, you also become so yummy. You become delicious. I have many phrases of him that go through my psyche, and they're in Persian. But one of them, which is the first phrase I read in English, means you are a whirlpool closed onto yourself. Flow onto us, for we are the everlasting flood.
Say it again.
You are a whirlpool. You are like water, but a whirlpool closed onto yourself. Flow onto us, for we are the everlasting flood.
Oh, and then I melt like sugar in warm tea. I always love to know about people's families. Was your family supportive of your mystical leanings? Was that something that they were welcoming of, or were they suspicious of it?
They were not welcoming, unfortunately, or fortunately, because it was my dance. It continues to be my dance. My father, who I was just telling you about, this great artist, he very beautifully is, I mean, not to a fault in any way, but he proclaims himself as an atheist. And part of this, William, is just as he was growing up in Iran, he was encountering so much superstition and so much of what he was saying, people giving their power away based on a doctrine, based on whether it was religion or politics. And he didn't like any of that. He was suspicious of that. So he was an atheist. He is an atheist. And my mother, similar to him, is that way. But I just came into this world very much, in love with the creator, in love with the divine, and believing that there is such a thing as that. And my grandmother, who, as I was telling you, was a deeply spiritual being, then became my guide. But yeah, they weren't very happy with my mystical leanings, because they also saw it as religious. They thought I was religious, and they were concerned that I would become kind of a closed-minded, narrow-minded person. And in those days, people in Iran who were religious, who were Islamic, were either of the older generation, or they were of the working class. So it wasn't really someone like me wouldn't be religious. Not, in our milieu, they wouldn't be. So it was suspect.
I understand. My parents were very suspicious of my spirituality, very suspicious, because they had also those same ideas about people who were religious. They would have rather I was gay than religious. They would have rather I was right-wing than religious, all kinds of things they would have rather I had been than religious.
I feel like it was my path, and must have been your path too. Like, to really feel into your belief and your faith, no matter what. I mean, of course, I found it difficult, to be honest, but in retrospect, it was necessary.
Yes, I understand. I did 2 years retreat at one point, and my father, who was a psychiatrist, told his friends I'd left the country on a tax dodge because he just couldn't say that I'd gone on spiritual retreat. He would rather have died than said that. So listen, let's move into, let's talk about this practice of turning, which people would have seen, these beautiful images of the dervishes turning, spinning, and look, now what always fascinates me about that, especially as you're into embodiment, is these people who are spinning, they must be in their bodies in order to maintain their balance. And at the same time, they are in an altered state of consciousness, connecting with spirit. So presumably they're not dissociating, they're multitasking. How would you describe, because there seems to be a conflict between embodiment and what might look to others like spacing out as you spin?
I think you are touching on the core, meaning, core practice of whirling with what you're asking me, because I can't speak for what others feel. Really, it would be a challenge to do that. I can speak to what I feel and what it represents for me, based on the symbolism itself. Because your right hand, you raise your right hand, and you're receiving blessings of spirit. You're receiving the light, and you let that light course in, through your arm and come and rest in your heart. And then from there, you transmit the light with your left hand. You transmit the light into the world. So just observing, just understanding or listening to that symbolism, doesn't it make you realize that first of all, we're talking about being a channel of light, that we're talking about being a channel of blessings in the world. And a channel, in order to really transmit the blessings, needs to be grounded, needs to be present here and now. So for me, when I whirl, I'm marrying these two things. I'm marrying 100% abandon and surrender to the beloved, to the one, and 100% grounded and centered and here. So it's the two coming together that's exciting and fascinating and allows us to step into being a channel.
Has your experience of whirling developed and improved as you've passed through the years? Or is it a kind of constant state?
Improve is interesting. Whirling is, you're just turning around yourself, right? That's all you're doing. But every time it's different. That's so fascinating. That every time you're doing the same thing, but it's different. And I can just say that that could be because every time you go deeper and deeper and deeper. So I would say over the years, my practice has deepened. I'm able to surrender more and ground more. So, so, so I don't know if that you would call that an improvement. I just would call it a deepening.
Yes, that for me is because in my little cosmology, the whole purpose of our journey through life is more love, more consciousness. So whether it's gardening or teaching or being online or dancing, the issue is always, is there more love? Is there more consciousness? And the big shift that's happened in Western culture anyway, for me over the last 20, 30 years is this whole notion of embodiment, that spirituality is not just a transcendent space, though that's a good place to go when you need to, but it needs to be incarnated. The love, the consciousness needs to be fully embodied. It needs to be a felt experience.
Yes, that's what I'm dedicated to. I'm interested. I've been guided to really uncover or journey into how does light translate into physicality? How can the body and soul, if we say our soul is more akin to light, how can they resonate as one? Because after all, as physics shows us, the body, physicality, is the same, is energy, but it's just resonate. It's just moving at a denser speed. So density is not different than energy. Matter is not different than energy. It's just moving slower. So if that's the case, if well, physics tells us that's the case, how do we live that? How do we live this idea that our body is actually energy? It's actually more energy than density, more energy than matter.
You're prompting me to think something new, and that is play with this because you're also an acupuncturist, which means that you work with the meridians and you work consciously with the flow of chi prana through the body. So it occurs to me that when someone is whirling consciously, they're also creating an energetic vortex that allows the body and the etheric body, the aura, to more easily experience their connection with spirit. Is this how you think sometimes?
Yes, yes. The aim of whirling is to experience the body and soul as one, as one. Actually, the aim is to step into the oneness with your physical body, so that it's not about transcending to the body to experience the oneness, but to experience it with your body. Isn't that exciting?
What is not only exciting, it's an ecstatic experience.
And you know what? It's not about, oh, let me cultivate that, let me achieve it, let me attain it. You are that. You need to just kind of unravel the thinking, kind of let the barriers to this experience of how everything is one dissolve like sugar in tea.
What I'm thinking of for the people who are watching this conversation, and they're going to be saying, "Look, I'm not a very good dancer. Maybe I don't have great balance. Maybe I'm disabled. Maybe I'm old. Maybe I'm clumsy. Whatever, right?" I've heard about trance dance, but there's too much going on for me. And now there's whirling. What can I do in my kitchen that will help take me into that space? Do you have some ideas here? Do you have something you teach?
Does it have to be the kitchen?
Yeah. I'm putting people in a New York high rise where they've got maybe two rooms and they're single parents and their children are asleep. Where are they going to do it?
Well, to that, I would say, wherever you are seated, standing, there's no one who is, forcing you to be like just still and steady and rigid, which most of us are most of the time. You can give yourself the permission to roll shoulders, rotate wrists, loosen up your neck and shake, which is my favorite thing to do, to, let things just release stuff that just take hold of us. Just shake, just dance and move exactly where you are. And this is what's very important to me to convey to people, to my students, is that it's not about dancing like me or dancing like Baryshnikov or thinking dance has to be a certain way. It's uncovering your own dance exactly where you are. If you have a frozen shoulder, dance the frozen shoulder dance. If you have a back that's hurting, dance the hurt back dance. Just move in the way that you can open these blockages or whatever is stiff. Breathe into them, but keep on moving is what I would say to people. Move in your own way and trust that there is a wisdom in your body, that when you connect with that wisdom, your body opens and moves in a way where he brings himself to balance, to coherence.
Okay, so let's stay with that for a moment, because this summit is about psychic abilities and that whole metaphysical area. So there we are, and I absolutely agree with you. First thing I do when I get up is shake and stretch, and I also say hello to my body with I have a relationship with my body. It's not just something I use. So what I'm wanting from you now is suggestions and advice for the state of mind, for the mood, for the awareness that people need to bring into the dance, the stretch, the shake, the sore shoulder. What's the awareness? What's the mood that's needed here?
It's a good question. What's the awareness? What's the mood? Curiosity is one. Connecting with loving awareness. So I love what you said about waking. You wake up and you say hello to your body. That's beautiful. For me, I don't say hello to my body because I am my body. I am my body. I am my soul. So there is no duality there. But I understand that because of our inheritance from thousands of years of patriarchy, where the body is regarded as less than the soul and the body is regarded as less than the mind, we have a lot of work to do in terms of kind of saying, hey, there is really no duality here. Actually, I am one. So we have a lot of work to do there, and some of it can be playful, and some of it is a little bit more challenging. But what I would say to people is, yeah, curiosity and loving awareness, weaving kindness and loving awareness into your body. Because so much of the tensions that we feel, so much of the stiffness that we experience is the way we hold ourselves, the way we are in a state of tension. And that state of tension, William, to me, comes from our thinking. it's that, it starts from our thinking, and then it just is translated into the state of the body. So if we can move with this idea that I'm just kind of loving my body, bringing kind of this kindness and loving awareness into me, I think that's a good start.
I like what you just said, because you said, I am loving my body. So there's, in the middle of all that, there is an I who is doing the loving, right? And I know we're one, but at the same time, if I have got if my calf muscles are spasming, then I, heart, mind, psyche, need to stretch into the calf with kindness.
Yes.
And in those moments, there's definitely me, my psyche, and me, my body.
What if you say I, mind, soul, psyche, as you said, body will love my body?
Yeah. I suppose so, because messages are going through your neuroendocrinal network into that part of your body. It's absolutely it's all enmeshed, isn't it?
Yes. And you know what I just remembered is how people say, oh, my back is killing me. And I would say actually is, oh, you're killing your back because of the way you hold yourself, because of the way you force yourself to pick up heavy things without, an awareness of, how that should be done in a way that doesn't bring injury. So it's fascinating the way we experience, because of the worldview, because of the way we think, the way we regard the body as a prison of the soul. Because of that, then it leads to these kinds of things like, oh, my back is killing me, statements, as opposed to what am I doing that is causing my back to feel so much pain,
All right, so here comes a $64,000 metaphysical, philosophical question, a grenade I'm about to lob into the conversation, right? Yeah, it's all one, and one also with nature and the cosmos and everything else. So that's where the kind of psychic sensibility comes in, because if you're still and embodied, there's an ability to be a kind of radar dish to everything, and then you die. This is me throwing in the grenade. Then you die, right? And then consciousness separates from the body. Something happens, and dust to dust, ashes to ashes. So there's an interesting spiritual discussion point here, is while we're alive and in the body, it's all one system. But when we die, suddenly there's a separation. And I think people, especially as they get older, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and their bodies, 90s, and their bodies start to feel some stiffness and pain and all that kind of stuff, there's a part of the psyche that naturally goes, okay, what is my body doing? Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying, I wonder how you dance with that,
That's the answer. You continue to dance with that. And what's important is that when we age and when we go through life, to not be so attached to the way things were. So the invitation to keep on dancing, and dancing also, physically and metaphorically, with whatever is the experience of life. When you look at, when I see dancers in, in their 80s, in their 90s, they look to me healthier than others, because what dance has given them throughout their life is this sense of humor and this resiliency and adaptability, and sort of appreciating and celebrating being in the moment. Having said that, I also know that some people, dancers included, stay attached to the way how they were able earlier in their lives, their capabilities as a younger person, and judge themselves, and that can create a lot of sorrow and grief. But the invitation is to dance with whatever is, so that we go back to that loving awareness and that kindness. You know, in the dance of oneness, in this modality that I've created, the main technique, William, is kindness. Kindness to self and kindness to others. So this kindness to yourself means that as you age, you remain kind to your frailties, and you dance with that.
I like everything you're saying. I liked very much about 2 minutes ago you mentioned that dance helps create a sense of humor. I like that. That resonates with me. Can you unpack that just a little bit? Because I think, especially if you're in pain or your body's doing things you don't want to do, alongside kindness, there needs to be a good humor that's able to kind of go, just, can you unpack it a bit?
Exactly. I think humor really comes to our rescue a lot, doesn't it? Just kind of being able to laugh with it all and say, oh yeah, look at look at my pain is back and this kind of thing. Well, William, we all dance when we were little children, don't we? Little children dance. Babies dance. So it just shows you how dance is something that just instinctively, we do it instinctively in as we live. It's like our instinctive response to life. If we don't put on all the other stuff that are part of being a human being, all the thinking and all the contemplation, which is good too, but dancing has that playful aspect. So the playfulness of it helps us stay humorous, helps us stay light. So when I was saying, you receive the light with your right hand in the whirling, and you bring it into your heart and then transmit it into the world, that the light in the English language also holds this, the word light in the English language holds the secret, another secret, which is light is also lightness. And part of lightness is lightheartedness and humor, playfulness.
But what I'm hoping is that everybody listening to this, may even right now listening to it, be going, oh, maybe it's time I just had a little bit of a lighthearted, good-humored little shake, maybe a stretch.
Yeah, and everyone has that, piece of music they really love, or different kinds of pieces of music that they love. Just put that on and just move with it. Just give yourself the permission to do that. And then see how your mood changes.
There's so much spirituality that's over serious and earnest and slightly pompous. And those attitudes actually work through the body to create tension. They're not good for your health. And people forget that stretching, dance is, as you say, it's what children do. It's normal. It's natural. But it needs to be light and just almost bubbling through the body. I watched this lovely on YouTube video of your father, who was a great clown and comic, as well as being a producer and everything. And it's a dance sequence with an American woman who's a ballerina, and she's absolutely impeccable with her ballet dancing. And he's not. He's a klutz. He's a real klutz, but he's really good at clenching his buttock muscles. Remember that sequence?
Oh yes, I love that.
It's very, very funny, and also people need to go watch you on YouTube as well, because they don't. There's some beautiful videos of you dancing on YouTube which are accessible to everyone.
Thank you. Yes, and they're not funny though. I mean, he's funny. He's like what you said. He's a comedian.
He's lovely. I loved him. So listen, tell me a little bit. You've set up this program, the Dance of Oneness. What exactly is it?
So Dance of Oneness is a practice that brings together three streams. One stream is rigorous dance and movement technique, drawing from my background, which is in flamenco, Persian dance, Tai Chi, and Qigong, and then, of course, the whirling. So it's this rigorous technique that's based in these modalities, and then freestyle, expressing yourself, improvisation. So really getting into that, into your own creativity through movement. And another stream is wisdom teachings. And the wisdom teachings I draw from the Sufi, the divine feminine, and the Taoist traditions. The third stream is healing. The healing dimension I draw from the chakra system, the awareness of the chakras, and from Chinese medicine. But also just embodying wisdom teachings through dance, the Sufi, the divine feminine, the Taoist, in itself is healing. So these three streams come together to create a practice that is really dance as a spiritual path and a science of embodiment.
Dance, wisdom, healing. That's a beautiful package. And but I have it, as you say it, I have it now surrounded by light and good humor and fun and children. And
embodiment is, celebrating being alive and all that entails, and loving being alive.
unless you become as little children again, you shall not enter heaven. So, listen, we're coming to the end of this conversation, which I have really loved. I hope I haven't spoken too much. Is there anything you'd like to say before we, as a kind of final message, before we go into a blessing that completes our conversation? Anything you fancy as a last message to everybody?
Well, I think that the message has already, come through what we were speaking about, which is come into your body, come into yourself, and discover what that feels like. So many of us, when we have pain or we have an illness, kind of explore what is happening in the body and what is the physiology and how do things work. Just want to invite people to inquire into that and be curious about your body before things like that bring your awareness into your body. And despite the pain and the illness, know that you can still come into your body and find that peace and find that tranquility and well-being that is at the core of your being.
Amen. Hallelujah to that. And this has been a lovely conversation for me, and I hope for everybody else that's been listening as well. I would love it, Banafsheh, if you would give us a prayer or a blessing to close off this wonderful session.
I would love to, William, and I want to thank you first. I really enjoyed speaking with you. It's been a delight. So what I would, the blessing I'd like to give is to ask people to remember that everything you need is already within you. That within you, you have all that is required to live the life you dream about. As Rumi says, ای نسخه نامه الهی که تویی، ای آینه جمال شاهی که تویی، بیرون ز تو نیست هر چه در عالم هست، در خود بطلب هر آنچه خواهی که تویی. You are a unique edition of the divine manuscript. You are a mirror reflecting imperial majesty. Whatever is in the world is not outside of you. Whatever you seek, whatever you long for, find it within. For what you seek is you. And I know that those are words that can be easily said, but I invite you to close your eyes and really feel that you have within you all that you need. And now please take a deep breath in. And with your exhalation, open your eyes. And I hope you remember this feeling. Thank you.
Banafsheh, Sayyad, that was a great session. And thank you all for listening.